Hello, everyone. You are watching Sunday Talks with Kellie and Lisa. I, of course, am the Kellie part of that.
And I'm Lisa. Good morning.
We are going to start with talking about Dark Night of the Soul. And we're going to see where we end up because it does relate to an awful lot of other things.
Yes.
So, what is the Dark Night of the Soul? I did a video on my YouTube channel, short video, a month or so ago, about Dark Night of the Soul. And what I got was a lot of people who are talking about St. John of the Cross and his version of Dark Night of the Soul. Clearly, St. John of the Cross was a Christian. Guess what, people? Every other religion has a Dark Night of the Soul. It's I can't remember the band now, but there was one band that's attributed to the creation of the term heavy metal. He created the term Dark Night of the Soul. That's all I'm saying. Nothing to do with religion. Excuse me, if that's going to happen today. What it is you're lost. You feel lost. You don't know who you are. You don't know what you are. You don't know what you're doing. You don't fit anywhere that you used to fit. Commonly, people will tell me, I have no friends anymore. I woke up one day and everybody was gone. I'm like, that's a dark night of the soul. Congratulations, you're growing. That's what it means. And people have the idea that they're being punished or they've done something wrong, or, just the phrase dark night, it tells people it's a negative thing. It's not a negative thing, and it's not happening to you. It's happening for you. When you reach the point where nothing fits anymore, and I'm not talking about your clothing, I'm talking about ideas, beliefs you grew up with, those kinds of things. When you reach that point, it's because you've outgrown those things.
Yeah.
You need to move forward. And sometimes people have a gut reaction of, no, I must have done something wrong. I have to make amends somehow. And I've had a number of clients, mostly students, but some reading clients as well, that have said, well, I sent them a letter and I apologized and I sent them flowers. And that's not what it's about. You didn't do anything wrong. You're growing apart. In your life, you're going to have people that walk beside you, and then you're going to walk alone for a while. Happens to everyone. Unfortunately, the way a lot of religions, Christians, I'm talking to you, view a dark night of the soul is that, well, the devil is fighting with you. You're being tempted. You're doing, and that's, sorry. You can't blame, the dark night of the soul is not something to blame someone for or blame anything for. It's just something that happens as we grow. And you have to grow, you really do. How many lives do you want to come back for? I'm kind of like, I'm done, I'm good. But that's where it starts. It starts with that feeling lost, feeling like you don't fit anywhere you used to fit. I've had people call me and say, I woke up and I don't think I believe anything I've ever believed in my life anymore. Okay. But it can be that traumatic. Sometimes it's not. And guess what? We get more than one of those in a lifetime. So, yeah. What are your thoughts on it?
Oh my gosh, I have quite a few. The first one is, you mentioned people leaving your life. You no longer have that group of friends or whatnot. It's not always about you either. There's another party involved. And if they see that you're outgrowing them and they're making the conscious decision to not be involved in your life anymore, it's not about you. And you need to respect that boundary. You don't necessarily need to make amends. If you've done something horrible, that might be one thing, but you don't necessarily need to make amends or try to get these people back. It is the natural progression of life. Things come in and things leave. So that was like one of the first things that popped in when you mentioned the changes that come, as you grow and stretch your boundaries.
Yep.
The dark night of the soul is meant to stretch you and to test you, if you want to use that, if that makes you feel better, or if that helps you process, in your brain that you're being tested. But those tests are to stretch you. They're not to prove anything to anyone or any certain
Right.
being, but it is to stretch you, to help you grow and to help you step a little bit more into your power or your purpose. Or heck, it might not even be that, might not even be that woo woo or profound. It might just be, it's the next step to that next step to that next step. So that was another download that I had. And then the other one is, you know, for the longest time, humanity has written some of our very first discoveries of books and song and whatnot have always been about that hero's journey.
Yep.
Beowulf was one of the first ones that, was actually scribed and transcribed and, translated. And that was the hero's journey. And, we're the hero. We're the hero in our own story. We have to go and fight our own monsters.
Yep.
And that's something that humanity has always had to do. There are different ways that you can wrap your mind around it. I know for me, growing up in a very religious household, those battles were to bring us closer to God, to bring us more to in the oneness of ourselves, and that meeting in that relationship with God, universe, source, whatever whatever works for you to name that. And other religions,
Right.
enlightenment, higher self, whatever it's called in different religions or philosophies, it all really is the same thing. It's to help you take that next step to that next level that you're supposed to be.
Right. Right. And you can't constantly be looking for someone to save you. You have to be your own hero.
Mhm.
And that's kind of what Dark Night of the Soul is about too, on some level, is because you have to come face to face with yourself. You know, I forget which Star Wars movie it was where Luke has to face himself in the cave. And I remember sitting in a theater with a friend watching that, and somebody 3 rows back goes, "He's having a dark night of the soul." And I went, "Whoa." and and that was quite a while ago. So a lot of people say, "Well, what is this? It's new." It's not new. I forget what century St. John of the Cross actually lived in, but it was a very long time ago, centuries ago. This is not new, thousands of years ago. It seems to be people are wanting to think all of it new age. No, it's actually old age. It's not, there's nothing new about this stuff. But people, for some reason, and maybe it's more prevalent in the West, I think it probably is,
Yeah.
have been taught that somebody's going to come and save you. Nobody's going to come and save you. You really have to save yourself. I've seen many times where someone has been working on themselves and moving forward, and then they make the right connections that come in, and it looks like they've been saved. But you have to do your own inner work. The universe works that way. When you're going through a dark night of the soul, it is because you're ready to grow. It is because you're ready to expand and let go of some of the stuff that you've been dragging along with you. Anything from your past, whether it was a traumatic upbringing or a bad breakup or the loss of it, whatever it is, it's time to let that go. It's not, it isn't neat, it isn't easy, but it's necessary. And I think people, at least in the West again, don't want to do that hard work. They don't want to do it. I used
Not
to,
on self. They'd rather slave away at a job.
right. Well, or they'll fix someone else.
Yeah.
I see what you need to do. You need to know you need to do that yourself. And that's something, that lack of personal accountability, I think holds more people back than anything else, really. It's just, why can't you see that? If you can see other people need to do some work, why can't you see that you need to do that too? You know, it really does start with each of us as an individual. That's where it has to start.
Well, you know, and you said no one's going to step in to save you, but you're going to be given the resources that are necessary for you to be your own hero, but you have to be open to accepting those
Right,
resources as well. You know, if somebody comes into your life that can help you, you have to be open to receiving the help from that person.
right.
You, or else you're not going to, you know, progress, whatever the case may be. I had an interesting conversation with somebody on Facebook. They posted about you need to do the hard work to get the promotion or to get the position or whatever the case may be. It shouldn't be handed to you. And I was like, wait a minute, why are you jealous of the person it was handed to? What
Right,
are you not doing to be that person who has that network of who I know, not what I know? Because we all need help.
right.
We all need, you know, the resources to come to us. And this person was open, the person that was being discussed was open to receiving that resource to get a higher position, make more money, whatever the case may be. There wasn't a whole lot of detail. And the person who posted about it was closed off to that kind of
Right.
stuff. And even having that mentality of it shouldn't be who you know, it should be based on your hard work is closing off any resources that can help you progress, grow, make more money.
You have to understand too, that especially if you're going through a dark night of the soul, opportunities may come up that you're like, wait a minute, is this a test? Is this, something like that? Because you always have to be true to yourself,
Yeah.
even while you're growing and expanding. And yes, you need to stay open to opportunities. Some of those opportunities, though, really could be a test. And that kind of makes it a little bit more interesting. If something comes along and you think, well, I asked for money and here's this job offer, I should probably just take it. And then you do, and you miss this thing over here that would have been better because you were like, I hate this company, but I need the money, so I'm gonna do. Don't do that. Be true to yourself. Know if something is not a good fit for you, it's not a good fit for you. You can say thank you, but no thank you, and really have faith and trust that the right opportunity is going to come, because it will. I've seen it too many times, and I've done it myself, where you're just like, okay, well, I'll just take this because, and then I'm like, oh wait, there it went, And you have to really be honest with yourself. If you're not going to be able to do something for very long, and the position that I took was actually assembly line for a vehicle manufacturer in California. Hated every second of it, but I needed a job at the time and I just took whatever. And like a week after I started that job, I ran into somebody, oh, I was going to offer you this. And it would have been, and I'm like, because you have to sign a contract with the union that you have to stay. I had to stay for 6 months. So I missed out on something. If I had waited 2 days longer, it would have gone a whole different direction. But people do that to themselves all the time. You have to be true to yourself and understand that not everything that comes across your pathway is meant for you. It's the same thing with anything else in your life. It can be, I've had many spiritually oriented students who have just chased after a one particular guru because they happened to cross a flyer. Well, you need to be, a little bit wiser, and you need to investigate things. And number one, if someone's telling you, hey, I'm a guru, they're not. But people are all searching for something.
Yeah.
And oftentimes I think that's why we go through a dark night of the soul. It's to refine, what do you really want? You know, you can't just say, I want money, the right car, and a great house. You can't do that. You have to be more specific. Sometimes we bring on our own dark nights of the soul. And it's usually when we're really frustrated and we've hit the wall and we're like, nope, not doing any of this anymore. Well, then you trigger something else in yourself. It's like, I cannot go down this road anymore. I have to make a left turn.
Yeah.
And that will often trigger your own dark night of the soul. So it's an interesting concept that a lot of people grapple with, but it can be as easy or as difficult as you want it to be.
Yeah. I like to think that it brings you back to yourself,
Mhm.
because we get so distracted with all of the shiny, and in modern society, we need money to live. We need money to pay bills. Like, heck, even if you owned a property with a commune that's growing stuff, you still have to, there's still things you need. You have to pay the tax man for that property, or they're going to come and take it. You know, there's certain things that do require a coin in order for you to have. So, you know, even in today's society, it's not a barter system. It's not, oh, I picked this land, so I get to keep it concept.
No.
So I understand the fear of that, of needing food. And of course, now we add education and children and all of the things that come along with, particularly here in America, with what we're looking for as far as that lifestyle. And we tend to get away from ourselves. We start focusing on the things that are not important, and we lose ourselves. And you know, that dark night of the soul can be illness, because you're just not letting it out. You're not letting that energy out. Um, we're not saying go quit your job,
No.
because we need money to survive, but you know, there's some jobs out there that are not, they're not fulfilling. But if they're funding the fulfillment that you have outside of work, you know, maybe that's okay. If it's funding a hobby for you to start building a different life for yourself. But here in America, we've really, you nailed it back when you said the Western society. We've really just kind of lost the concept of self, and of not being greedy, or pardon me, chasing the wrong things. And that higher self and enlightenment, that connection back to self, which connects you back to source.
I think a lot of people, at least in the US, but I talk to people like in Europe quite a bit, they don't know what they want.
Yeah.
They don't know who they are. They're just like floating through life, you know, and then they wonder why they're not as successful as they wanted to be. You know, I spoke with someone last night. This is not the way I thought my life would turn out. Well, guess what? Neither do I. You know, no one is ever exactly where they want to be. There's always something else we can learn. There's always something else we can try, we can experience. But you have to know where to start.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times that dark night of the soul is your beginning
Yes.
to change things. That is your opportunity. That is, okay, everything has crashed and burned. Start over. Be the phoenix rising from the ashes. And when I said that, she went, how? Okay.
Yes. How?
You have to start. You have to make your intention that from this moment on, I am walking my path. Not anybody else's, not what someone tells me to do. From this moment on, I am me, and I'm stamping into my power, and I'm staying there this time. Because a lot of times people start out and they're doing really well, and then they're like, you know what? I just want someone in my life. I just want a relationship. And they don't care what kind of relationship. So they just, you wanted a relationship? Here is a drug addict, alcoholic who has been to prison twice. Here is your relationship. You have to be specific, you know, and I do know someone that is their relationship. No, not you. But it is your chance to start over. You know, in this particular person's case, she's always dreamed of being a master gardener. Become a master gardener. That's a fantastic thing for you to do. And she's got like 12 green thumbs, I swear. I have shown her plants that were dying. She, okay, well, you need to do this, and it survived something that's incredible. I don't have that. but you have to get in touch with what that is inside of yourself that moves you forward. When you were a kid, what did you like to do?
Yes.
You know, that kind of stuff, those kinds of questions. Were there things that you always wanted to try, but you never had the chance?
Yeah.
Go try it. And maybe you'll hate it, but maybe you'll love it. You know, you have to start somewhere. And if you have been programmed your entire life, this is what you think, this is who you are. And all of a sudden you wake up one day and you're like, that's not who I am.
Yeah.
That's your chance to start over. Yay. You know, but spend some time starting over. Don't just pick up what you just left behind. A lot of times people start to move forward. Oh, this is really hard. And then they just go back and pick up what they dropped and, you know, move on. And that's not starting over. That's just picking up the trash and bringing it back into your house when you just took it out. So don't do that either.
Yeah, and remember that you're not going to get to the top of Mount Everest if you've never even purchased the equipment. So it's I hate baby steps. It's not my favorite phrase in the world, but you're not doing the 100-meter dash.
Right.
You're doing, cross country here. And so it's not like this is it and this is my decision. And tomorrow you're waking up and that's exactly what you're stepping into. But you can step into the role of walking through those choices and decisions that need to be made to get you closer to that final whatever goal it is that you have for that outcome that you want. So it's definitely, you mentioned the master gardener. I am not a master gardener. And I have to watch 12 different videos and I'm still not sure what to do even after I do all of that because there's so many choices.
Right.
I was reminded of something that I read. I have ADD. And so I'm constantly forcing myself to focus. We do have the gift of hyper focus when we can actually get in that zone. And I love that, but I still have all that shiny that drags me away. I was watching something, this goes back to, it's not it's a marathon, not a race. I was watching something where we have so many choices. How do you figure out who you are? One of the basic things you mentioned, go back to what you loved to do when you were a kid. Did you like to ride bicycles? You could do that on the weekend, pick up cycling, join a group, you work at a shop, something along those lines that gets you into the cycling world. I don't know. That might not be a career that you want to do, but you can at least have that part of that joy in your life. The choices that we have, especially here in the United States, there are so many, so there's so much overwhelm. So you have to really be able to focus in and figure out what it is that you want. And that requires determination and it requires persistence. You might not be able to figure it out the very first time you go at it, but do it again the next day. Journal. Just start writing. It'll come. Do it again the next day. Do it again the next day. Then when you start opening up those pathways, you'll start creating the plans or see a bigger vision to help you move to that next step and move to that next step. And I think that's what a lot of people miss. And I think that helps answer that question, why? Because I know I've come to you about, but how? And I know the answer, but like we still have these amazing conversations, which is why we came back to doing this show. And like you really you have to be persistent. You have to have something that you do every day. You have to be dedicated to that. You have to be disciplined to do that.
Yeah, you have to have the intention that even when things get hard, you're going to keep going.
Yeah.
Too many people just give up on themselves. And you really can't do that. It's tough, and I've said this before, when you are trying to figure out who you are later in life, like not as a child or a teenager when everybody's supposed to be doing that. If you've been programmed so rigidly your entire upbringing, when you hit, your 30s, it started for me in my 30s. I was like, that's not who I am. Wait a second, but it just, and then it happened again when I hit 50. And it's just, you just are always rediscovering yourself.
Yeah. Yes.
It's not one and done. And people just go, oh, okay, I get it. I'm doing this now, and that's all I'm ever going to do. Maybe for 10 years you'll do that.
Yeah.
Maybe not even for that long. When I started a pet sitting company at one time. I've started a bunch of businesses, but anyway, I've started a pet sitting company at one time. And I was good for, it was a great company, and I loved it for about 10 years. And I was like, I cannot do this anymore. And I sold it. And when I sold it to one of my pet sitters. And I told her, you'll do this for about 10 years. And she says, well, I've already worked as a pet sitter, for longer than 10 years. And I went, just wait. 10 years later, she called me out of the blue. Okay, I'm ready to sell. I'm like, I told you. Some things you go into knowing I'm going to outgrow this. You just know you are. And that's okay. You can still have that experience.
Right.
It was a lot of fun. That's probably the most fun business I've ever had. But still, you do outgrow things. And you should be outgrowing things throughout your life. You should always be outgrowing things. Last time I was at the food bank, there's an 85-year-old man who comes in, and he had been an Olympic sprinter, I think in like the 40s or 50s. I mean, he's 80 now, so 85 now. And he still walks everywhere. He says, I can't run anymore, but I'm a really good walker. And there you go. But he's recently taken up painting. He said, my whole life, I never had time. And now that I can't move around as much as easily, I decided I want to learn to paint. He's 85 and he's taken up painting. And I'm like, I hope I can take something up like that, because that's the way we should be growing. We should always be experiencing something new. And you're never too old, and it is never too late. So I hear that a lot too.
Somebody needs to start that man a TikTok channel, because that is inspirational to be, going from, I was this Olympic athlete and I might not have that ability anymore, but let me shift my perspective and my mindset, because I still have the ability to do this instead. And I'm going to do this. And now I'm going to take this up because I can, and I'm going to learn how to paint. That is so inspiring.
Well, and one of the younger people that was around then when I was talking to him said, don't you miss running? And he said, I missed a lot of scenery going by so fast. You slow down.
I love it. I love that. That is great.
I just, but that's who he is.
Yeah.
And there aren't many people like that, unfortunately. But I think that's something we should all aspire to be like. You have to shift your perspective. Yeah. And shifting your perspective is so important, especially during a dark night of the soul.
Yes.
Because if you're sitting there and everything you thought you were has changed, and what is really common is for things you did not even remember from childhood that hurt your feelings surfacing. I've had many people tell me about something that they remembered that they know happened, but they don't really remember it, but all of a sudden it's surfacing. One of my students got lost in a department store, and he was gone for so long, his mother forgot she took him with her and went home. And he was in the department store for 2 hours. And he said, maybe I blocked it out, but I didn't remember that happened. And it was that pain all over again of that kid. And he was 4, he said, so he may not actually remember it. It could have been something that he just didn't register or whatever, but it definitely left a scar.
Yeah.
And it started surfacing. And he's like, I'm already thinking I've lost my mind because I just, he did quit his job and, do all of that stuff. He's quit his job, sold his house, moved into his car and moved to a different state. He's not homeless anymore, but yeah. But he said he was just so tired. And what had happened to him is he had a coworker at his previous job that was just always pick. He couldn't do anything right. This guy was just reporting him to superiors for stuff he didn't do. And finally, one day he walked into work, and they used to work with binders. They all had a binder they had to carry around and make notes in. And he picked up that binder and he smacked the guy across the face. And he said, and then I quit. I'm like, well, I hope so, because that wouldn't have gone over very well. And he said that was just, he just had all he could take.
Yeah.
And rather than lose his house because he couldn't make payments, he sold it and he just left. And sometimes I guess certain people need that.
Yeah.
I know I put everything in my car one time and drove across the country to start over. So, it's not something I recommend, but it is something that does work quite effectively. If you're going to start over, it's
Start over.
start over. It just is a very individual thing. But you have to know yourself well enough to know when enough is enough. Because the other thing we do is we keep putting up with it, and we put up with it, and we put up with it, and we put up with it. And we don't even, it happens so often, and we do it so religiously that we forget we're putting up with something. And we think, well, this is just the way life is. You just suck it up and move on. You just do it. And that's not the way life is. So
no, it's definitely not. Yeah.
I don't recommend hitting people in the face with a clipboard, but but you don't want to keep putting up with something in a bad situation either. We kind of get caught in that what we know, no matter how horrible it is better than the unknown.
Yeah.
And it's not true. It's just not true.
Yeah.
But those kind of things also happen with the dark night of the soul. It's I do have a friend in Northern California who was a corporate attorney for many years. And she one day decided she wanted to become a Buddhist monk. And she
all
did.
right.
And she is a Buddhist monk still 20 years after she made that decision. And, I make a lot of Buddhist monk jokes from time to time. It's because I know one, and it's just dramatic life change. Everything upside down, inside out. She owns nothing today. And she says she's happier than she's ever been. I can tell you she's healthier than she's ever been. But, it's just, people do crazy things during a dark night of their soul. And looking back in hindsight, wasn't so crazy after all.
Yeah.
But you have to be true to you. It doesn't matter what anybody else does. The big thing, though, is to realize you're going through one. Sometimes people get confused with a dark night of the soul, and they just don't think it's ever going to end. And it will end. It will get better. You will see the light at the end of the tunnel, and it is not an oncoming train. So hang in there when you're going through it, because it can get really intense. But if people that you know for a long time, if they start coming up to you and saying, wow, you're really different, maybe you are. Sometimes we do a lot of work on ourselves in our dreams. There's been a lot of that recently, or maybe I'm just hearing about it more, but I've had several people actually tell me, I had this weird dream and I knew I was dreaming, and I'm like, that's a lucid dream. Okay, continue. And they're just I kept taking packages out of my stomach and putting them on a conveyor belt and watching them go away. And I'm like, huh, what do you suppose that means? You know? And it's just, well, I'm not as stressed as I've been. Huh. Yes. You know, somebody else had something where the things were flying away from his head. You know, birds were landing on his head and flying away with something. I'm like, overthinking much? Okay. You know, but pay attention to that. When you have those dreams, or even if you don't realize you're dreaming, when you're dreaming, it can still be a very important dream if you wake up remembering it.
Yeah.
I always tell people, write them down if you can. Keep, you know, a piece of paper and pen or whatever by your bed so you can wake up and write it down, because those always have some kind of meaning and they're always some kind of symbol. So don't just discard them. That's really common in the dark night of the soul. And that's something not many people talk about. You know, it's a different kind of thing to go through. But since everybody has more than one, you'll have time to practice.
We are always phoenixes and we are always going to rise. So we're going to be burned down and we're going to rise again.
Well, and that's the way it should be.
Yeah.
That is your signal. That is your sign. People tell me all the time, I just need a sign. You've had 74 of them. Wow, which one do you want? Yeah. But that is your sign that things are changing for you. And you need to change and do your shadow work. Okay, what is shadow work? When you realize that things are falling apart in your life, ask yourself how you feel.
Yeah.
Because we don't do that. If you are going through a really hard time and you're just reactionary, why? Ask yourself why. Why did it hit you like that? What kind of memory or belief is that unlocking for you? Because when we are triggered, there's a reason we're triggered. And a lot of us just don't even, yeah, that made me upset. Okay, bye-bye. Let's just go do this. You have to look at that. When you look at the ways you react to things, all things, good things, bad things, whatever, you're getting more into yourself.
Yeah.
You need to be acquainted with yourself.
Yes.
And I know that sounds really funny, but believe me, we're not most of the time. You have to know what makes you tick. You know, and it has to be deeper than, well, I care about things. All right, why? You know, what things? Why? What things? Why? And keep doing that until you get to the point where you really don't have any more questions to ask. We've all been programmed at some point in our lives. And in order to find out who you are, you need to unprogram.
Yes.
Go as deep as you can into who you are. When something upsets you, what is it triggering? Is it a memory? Is it a belief? Is it a trauma? What is it that it is triggering? And that's kind of doing your shadow work. You got to find out why things affect you the way they do. Bless you. And you have to know how to change that.
Yeah.
You don't want to go through life always being triggered. You want to do some healing of that. And when you uncover what it is that makes you react a certain way, then you can heal it. You know, oh, that's right. My mom left me in a department store for hours when I was 4. Then you can heal it. She didn't mean to. She wasn't being angry. She didn't decide she didn't want you anymore. You know, all of those things. And that has got to be the most common fear of young children, is being forgotten about.
Abandoned, yep.
Yeah. And you have to understand how to heal them.
Yeah.
You know, you shouldn't mean to leave him in a department store. It's interesting what we remember though. I've had people tell me the most bizarre things. Like, my older brother told me I could jump off the roof and I would fly and I broke my arm. Well, yeah, that sounds like something an older brother would do to a younger sister. But things like that were not, he wasn't trying to hurt her. He thought it would be funny. It wasn't funny. But you have to look at those things from every angle. I've told students, pull it out of your head, look at it, make it a 3D model, look at it from every angle. Can you see what the other person was thinking? Did they intend to hurt you? Probably not. Can you see what, in that case, maybe a parent was thinking? You have to look at it from every angle. And then you can heal it, because then you can understand it and you can start to unpack it. And this is the way it made me feel. You are absolutely right to feel the way you feel. But you have to move past it.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's really scary for people to do. But you have to.
Yeah.
You really do. So what else do we have to say today?
I just want to expand on something that you said really quickly.
Mhm.
However old you are is however many versions of you there are. We talk
Yeah.
about our inner child a lot,
Yeah.
and you have at least 12 years of inner child that you have to go back to, and some of us experience trauma at birth. If you're told your whole life that you were, a burden to your mom during birth, you almost killed her, whatever, that might be something that you're
Yeah.
carrying with you.
Yeah.
Something is all the way back to birth.
Yeah.
And then if you experience something when you were 32 that you might have forgotten, or you're still processing, that goes back to a different younger you, that goes back to a different younger you, that goes back to a different younger you, you can help those younger yous
Right.
with coping skills to now pull into, being who you are right now, the age that you are right now. And it really is very much Albert Einstein-y to try to wrap your brain around something like that. But it's how you help move yourself through not carrying the burdens from your past, because they're in the past and there's nothing you can do about them now, and you don't need to carry them with you moving forward.
Right.
You get to be the best version of yourself and step into your power and your purpose today, right now. You
Right.
don't have to carry that stuff from your past.
Exactly. Put it down.
Yeah.
Yesterday I had a client that told me my inner child is just fine. My inner teenager, however. So,
Yep.
it's different for everyone. And, some people, their inner 30-year-old is having an issue. Whatever it is that you go back to when you're making decisions, or when you're trying to decide if you should take a risk. What do you think? What do you tell yourself? I am in the middle of trying to make a movie right now. Not something I thought I would do, 15 years ago. But when you go back to when I was a kid, my cousin and I made movies.
Oh.
He had an 8mm camera, one of the old first ones, and we would go around and shoot film all day. And we always talked about, wouldn't it be fun to make a movie one day? And then life happened. And then abusive relationships happened. And then slowly but surely, all the dreams I had were like packed over there in a corner somewhere, because I was dealing with life.
Yeah.
I didn't decide I was going to do a movie till I was 55. So when I have clients tell me they're too old, I'm like, you talking to the wrong person, honey. You just the wrong person. And it just, in my 85-year-old, neighborhood guy,
Yeah.
You're not too old. And I hear that so often that I have to bring it up, especially in connection with a dark night of the soul. Here's your chance to be who you always thought you were going to be as a kid, or as a teenager, or as a 35-year-old, whatever. Look at them as this is a new chance. Okay,
Yes.
all these people are gone from my life all of a sudden. And sometimes it does happen all of a sudden. Usually it's sort of a gradual thing, but sometimes you wake up one day and everyone's gone. That's kind of what happened to me. I literally went home from work one day and the person I thought I was going to spend my entire life with had packed up and moved out while I was at work. The dog too. And all my friends were gone because they were also his friends. That was a dark night of the soul that I wasn't sure I was going to survive, because it made me rethink everything, absolutely everything. But I wouldn't be where I am now, and I certainly wouldn't be making a movie now had I not gone through that experience. So you don't get lost in it. You know, it's a dark night, not a dark millennium. It will pass. You will get through it. Know that you will get through it. You will. So do you have anything else to say? I think we're
No, I think that's a great way to end the show.
okay. So thank you guys so much for watching, and we will be back again soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.